I always say the first step really is finding that community, finding that accountability partner, and making sure that you're cultivating a space where people feel safe to call you in, right? One of the things I always share with my team, with my community is I'm not above reproach. You are welcome to, and I get emails all the time from folks. Sometimes people say, the language that you use in this newsletter, I'm not really in love with. And I express an immense amount of gratitude because I want people to know that I'm open to that feedback. I'm open to hearing that. And the only reason why they know that is because I've shared in my community so much that I want to be able to receive in that way.
Hello. Welcome to today's session of Selling the Couch. I hope you're doing well, having an incredible day. So today's podcast is titled Building an Anti-Racist Practice in Times Like These. I'm joined by Kenya Crawford, who I did not realize was in Philadelphia until after our conversation. So I had assumed Kenya was in New York, but Kenya has a beautiful website called at kenyacrawford.com. She specifically works with therapists, with companies, and also with individuals to create healing spaces for our collective liberation. And we're talking about how we as clinicians can particularly build an anti-racist practice, especially given all of the things that are happening politically and with DEI programs and all of those kind of things. We dive into a bunch of different questions. Among them, there's a lot of talk recently of whether DEI programs are quote unquote dead. From Kenya's perspective, what is actually happening behind the scenes? And then we dive into how do you balance doing DEI and anti-racist work while running a sustainable business, especially if the demand for DEI work seems to be shrinking in some spaces. So this is both a really practical conversation, but also a conversation around how do you design practices and businesses with strategic intentionality. I think you're going to love this conversation. So here's my conversation with Kenya Crawford from kenyacrawford.com. Hey Kenya, welcome to Selling the Couch.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, after I feel like many months of navigating LinkedIn and trying to, coordinate something, I'm so thankful we get to have a conversation, but even more than that, just thankful for you, for the beautiful work that you're doing in the world, especially in a time like this, where there is so much polarization and even things that I wonder about, like, isn't DEI like something that we should all aspire for, right? It just seems so, I'm grateful for the work you're doing, and I'm grateful for just how you're thinking about things. And so, yeah, excited for our conversation.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to jump in.
On many levels, right? There's been a lot of talk lately about whether DEI programs are quote unquote dead. And I feel like even many therapists that do DEI work are shifting, are feeling uncertain. From your perspective, what do you think is actually happening, or what's your sense of what's happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, I love this question because I think it really amplifies that the work is still happening, but it's just shifted, right? I think a lot of organizations that are genuinely committed to doing anti-racist work are finding new creative ways to stay committed to this work. And I think that's been really beautiful to witness. I've witnessed some of my consulting clients get really creative around language, get creative around job titles, but still being committed to that work to ensure that their spaces are safe for folk of color, for folk with multiple marginalized identities, to ensure that they're in a space that they can feel celebrated. And I think it's also been really nice to see the organizations that have been engaging in DEI in a way that is performative kind of pull back. And we've been able to really see, like, oh, you weren't actually bought into anti-racism work. You were just doing this because you felt like you had to. So seeing organizations kind of pull back has been very clear to me and really illuminating to me which organizations and companies I want to support and continue to uplift.
Yeah, the whole performative aspect of it, I think, is just really fascinating. And I know, as with things, I know there's like multiple layers, but it's also like, man, were you doing this just because like it drove the bottom line, or did you actually believe in this? Like it is really, I don't know. I feel like moments of stress and volatility reveal a lot about, who we are, right? And I would extend that even to companies.
Absolutely, because in many ways our companies reflect our communities, right? And I think in what we need to do as community members is continue to kind of hold them accountable to what they say they're going to do. So one of my favorite things I've done with some of my consulting clients is I'll reread what we talked about in 2020, right? You said you wanted to do all of this in the next 5 to 10 years. Here we are in 2025. Where are you at in these metrics? Where are you at in some of these goals? And how can I continue to hold you accountable to ensuring that you're getting there? Or was this something that you just said so that more folks would come into your company and purchase your products and purchase your services?
I just wanted to connect the dots. So, and part of doing that, like referencing what's in 2020 is like a completely different political climate, economic climate, like all of that. So almost like, hey, here was the North Star that we had created back then. And how does it align to like how you're doing now?
Yeah, I will say I'm fortunate in that back in 2020, I was very selective on which companies and organizations I chose to work with because one, I was inundated with too many requests. So I had to be selective for my own sustainability. But a part of that selection process was really trying to weed out people who were just trying to throw money at the problem. And I've had some organizations come to me and say, we were going to just pay you $50,000 to make things great or make this organization better for folk of color. And I'm like, okay, well, that includes, an assessment, that includes different workshops, that might include letting go some staff that are causing harm. That might include coaching some folks who are struggling to uplift folk of color. Are you really willing to do that work? And they were like, no, we just want to give you the 50K, do like 2 or 3 workshops, and then you'll be done. I was like, well, that's not aligned for me. That's not how I work. So I think for me, sustainability in this work has also been recognizing that just because it's a beautiful number, just because it's a large number, doesn't mean it's the number that I should be going towards, right? There's something I always say, or my mom always says, I should say, is all money is not good money.
That's one of my best favorite quotes.
Right?
Yeah.
All money is not good money. So sometimes I would look at these, big invoices and say, hold on, is this worth it for me? Is this 50K going to be something that I'm going to feel proud of when I'm done this project?
This is a great area. I'm so grateful you brought this up because, I mean, I don't have much experience in this particular area, but I do know like corporations pay significant amounts of money. And especially for clinicians, like when we see that kind of money, and especially if it allows us to get out of the trading time for income, there's a real tension I could imagine of like, whoa, here's 50K or 100K, right? This may be like, I don't know, almost a year in private practice income, right? Versus standing for what you believe in and pushing back. How have you navigated that? Like, I'm just, yeah.
Yeah, I love this question. I think for me early on, I made a kind of rule for myself that I never wanted anti-racism work to be my full kind of income. It was never going to be my sole source of income. And one of the reasons for that is because I felt like if I did that, it'd be easier for me to be manipulated in the work and allow people to say, oh, well, this is what we're doing now for DEI, right? And we've paid you this amount of money. This is what you have to do. And I think as someone who's been working in this field for some time, I've realized that a large portion of the reason why I'm successful is because of the connections and the relationships that I've built. So if I'm aligning with an organization that is misaligned to my values, my community is going to start looking at me like, hold on, Kenya, what's going on? Right? You said this, that, and the third, but we're seeing your actions be misaligned, and we're curious about this. And I take my community very seriously. I take my reputation very seriously. So I had to do a lot of soul work. I had to do a lot of work around my own scarcity mindset and my own kind of relationship with abundance and say, yeah, this 50K may be great right now. It may help me pay off some of my student loans, but it will actually cause so much more harm in my reputation, in my relationship, in my business later down the line. So is it really worth it? For me, it's a no.
That requires such an incredible amount of humility, gratitude, and centeredness to be able to recognize that. Like, so, I mean, like, serious props to you, because I think that's real. That's the real work, right? You brought up something which I think is also something that many of us don't think about, which is it's not about the one-off contract. It's actually the totality of the people that you work with. And when people know you are aligned with certain organizations, that itself creates a cascade of opportunities. But you also have to be strategic, not just like the individual level, but like collectively, who am I aligning with and what does that look like?
Yeah. And I think community helps me do that. I also think really setting up my business so that I have multiple streams of income allows me to do that. Right. One of the things that I've helped a lot of therapists do is cultivate an anti-oppressive rate structure in their private practices so that they can have some sustainability in this work. What does it look like to have some clients at more of a redistribution scale where they're paying maybe a little bit more than your other clients to help offset the cost of some of your reparations clients that are maybe paying maybe little to nothing, but you really want to be able to serve this community, right? So for me, it's really grounding in how can I lead this community? How can I lead this business with community care and ensuring that it's still accessible and sustainable for the folks that I really want to uplift?
That's really cool. At a practical level, like, what do those conversations look like at an individual level with those therapy clients? I mean, is it more that, as you sort of, as a practice incorporates thinking about like different fees based on reparations, all these things, right? Is it that the practice sort of takes a holistic bent to it and says, this is how we align? And, I'm just kind of curious about how that even practically plays out, because I love the concept.
Thank you. Yeah. And that's how it started. It started with me having conversations with my clients. It actually started back in 2018. I was having conversations with clients and they were saying, and these are clients who had a little bit more financial privilege. And they would say things to me, Kenya, I really want to give more. I just don't know where to give, right? I just don't trust where I'm giving. I'm worrisome that if I give to this organization, it may not be fully aligned. I really want to see kind of not the fruits of my giving, but I want to see it. I want to know where it's going in ways. So I was having these conversations with some clients. And then I was having other conversations with clients around, where can I find grants for therapy? Where can I get on, EAP programs? How can I make therapy more accessible? Because I really value the work that we're doing, but I'm not able to afford $200 every week if I'm a waitress in New York City, or if I'm an actress in New York City, or working on Broadway, really trying to make it big. Like, I remember having these conversations with clients. And I remember there was one time where I had a 1 o'clock and a 2 o'clock. And my 1 o'clock was someone who had far more financial privilege and my 2 o'clock. And it was a back-to-back moment. And I said, well, what would it look like for them to be able to support each other, but they don't actually have to talk to each other, right? They don't actually have to engage with each other. And then I started to do some more research, and I found some other organizations that were creating sustainability models for their businesses. And then I found this anti-oppressive rate structure. I made some shifts and changes to it so that I would align for my clients. And I started to ask them, would you be open to paying more so that someone else could have a session? So my client said, absolutely. When do I start? Where's my credit card? How can I sign up? Right? And other clients of mine felt this deep gratitude to know that they were in a practice that really valued them. And what's been really cool about this is I've witnessed clients kind of switch back and forth. Right? I've had clients who've been on my reparations tier for years, and then they've gotten a little bit more financial stability, and they've come to me and said, Kenya, I want to double my rate, because you made it accessible for me, and I want to ensure that you can still make it accessible for other folks. Right? Or I've had folks who've lost their jobs in the midst of all of these layoffs, and now they're back on my reparations tier when they've previously been on my redistribution tier for years. And they've said to me, Kenya, I'm really grateful that I could come to you and not lose out on this spot, not lose out on this access, because you've cultivated this space of community care. So for me, I've been able to have these conversations with my clients, and they've expressed an immense amount of gratitude. But it's also about the community that I'm cultivating and the space that I'm cultivating. And I think people know that about me, which is why they gravitate towards me.
I love that you've used the word community like several times in this conversation. I don't know, to me, like, in many ways, this is the real work of therapy. Not that we just like talk about stuff, but there's like a heart change and a soul change. And to have clients coming to you and being like, yes, I actually want you to charge me more, because it's not just about the treatment that I receive, but it's like what my community also gets to receive as a result of the privilege that I hold. Just beautiful. There were a couple of questions, and maybe we'll start here, which is, I think so many therapists want to start an anti-racist practice, but they feel, especially in this climate, where it seems like things change by the day. There's all this volatility, right? All this backlash. There's shifting political climates. What's like one place that you would encourage them to start if they do want to start an anti-racist practice?
Ooh, this is a really good question. I would say be very clear about who you're cultivating this anti-racist practice for. And I think sometimes we get caught up in our mission, or get caught up in what sounds nice as a mission, or what sounds good on a website. But sometimes the guiding light for us isn't the like beautiful, UVP that we write for grant opportunities or anything else, right? It's that internal kind of force, or that internal kind of driving light. And for me, mine is, I want to be the therapist I wish I had when I was in elementary school, right? Whenever I'm trying to decide on yes to this project or no to this project, I think about little Kenny and I say, well, will she be proud of this decision? Will this decision kind of support her, right? And the things that she needed when she was seeking therapy as a little 8-9-year-old, right? And I think for me, that's really important, because that is why I want to cultivate an anti-racist practice. I had to navigate really racist therapists when I was really little. So for me, that informs my decision. So I always recommend that therapists get really clear about, who are you doing this for? Are you doing this because it looks good? Are you doing this because you feel like you have to? Are you doing this because of your own maybe white guilt or shame, right? Like get really clear about why you're doing this, so that we can really kind of understand, like, is that what we want to be guiding from? Are we guiding out of shame? Are we guiding out of guilt? Are we guiding out of light? And once you have that clarity, then I want you to start moving towards some of the systems, right? What does this look like in hiring in your practice if you are doing so? What does this look like in the language that you use on your website when talking to clients? What does it look like in the language that you use when you're talking to clients in consultation calls, right? How do you describe yourself? Right? Are you talking about this with your clients, or is it just something you threw on your website and you think they've read? Most clients are not reading everything on your website, I promise you, right? So being very clear and ensuring that cultivating an anti-racist practice isn't just about one part of your practice, it's about every touch point, right? Every touch point that your client touches, every touch point that you touch, everything from how you navigate finances to how you navigate marketing and branding, and what visuals you use. Right, so I think it needs to be an intentional thought process at every decision making that you have as a business owner.
Yeah, I love the way you frame that. I mean, what I'm hearing in this is, especially I think in any sort of, whether it's traditional private practice, group practice, or you expand into coaching, or, do anything, right? I think the real tendency is always to kind of be in our business, right? So we're launching this thing, we've got this thing, and I think it is like a different skill set to be able to take that like 40,000 foot view and to be like, hey, this is how this decision might affect this. And I don't maybe have to consider this right now, but I do need to think about how this immediate decision, for me, like, that's both encouraging, but also intimidating. Right. Right. And how do you navigate that if somebody is listening and they're like, Kenya, like what you're saying like sounds amazing, but I have no idea where to start. Like, what is like a logical first step?
Yeah, well, Melvin, you mentioned this earlier, and it's clear to me that this is something that I really value because I said it so many times, but I think the clear first step is finding the community, right? Finding the community of folks who also have this shared vision or value. Because when you are making those decisions and maybe you're at a coffee date with this person or doing a lunch date with this person and you're saying, hey, I want to start launching courses, right? Like this person will also kind of, get curious with you about where is your anti-racist lens in doing so, right? How are you ensuring accessibility? How are you ensuring to ensure that this is accessible for all folks, regardless of ability status, regardless of class, regardless of gender identity, right? So I always say the first step really is finding that community, finding that accountability partner, and making sure that you're cultivating a space where people feel safe to call you in, right? One of the things I always share with my team, with my community is I'm not above reproach. You are welcome to, and I get emails all the time from folks. Sometimes people say, the language that you use in this newsletter, I'm not really in love with. And I express an immense amount of gratitude because I want people to know that I'm open to that feedback. I'm open to hearing that. And the only reason why they know that is because I've shared in my community so much that I want to be able to receive in that way. So I would say definitely find community. Cultivating Healers is a community that you are welcome to join if you're looking to be around like-minded clinicians who are centering an anti-racist and sustainable lens. And I'm sure there's so many others out there as well. Or if it's just finding that one accountability partner in your practice with you that can hold you accountable to these values and this vision.
Yeah, it's so beautifully said. I think the antidote that I hear is whether joining your amazing community or just the key thing is, especially if you're like a solo practitioner or even a group practitioner, just having that sense of accountability to be able to step aside and step out of like one's own narrow sort of focus and say like, okay, I need some kind of accountability so that I'm thinking through this in a purposeful and intentional way. How do we balance doing anti-racist work authentically while running a sustainable business, especially if the demand for DEI work seems to be shrinking in some spaces?
Yeah, this is a good question. I would say, yes, it is shrinking in terms of the opportunities are not as abundant as they were before. But I think it's important to remember that it's not completely gone, right? It's changed in many ways. The language has shifted, right? A lot of corporations are using different language, whether it's inclusion or psychological safety or belonging or these other terms, which I have mixed feelings about because I don't know every organization's intentionality in using that terminology, right? I think for a lot of companies, they've had to make this shift because they want to protect themselves, their organization from some of the vitriol that we've seen. Whereas for others, it's been an easy way to kind of, skate by and not do this work. So when it comes to finding opportunities when there's not as many, I think it's important to get a little bit creative and really kind of talking to different members of some of the corporations or organizations you want to work with. Or what are they really still challenging with? Or what are they really still struggling with? Because racism didn't just go away just because now there's certain terms that are legal. Right. It's starting to look different in these organizations. And I think we're seeing it in, the amount of layoffs that have happened, particularly for Black women over the last few months. We're seeing it in these really systemic ways that is still causing harm. So how can you shift the way that you reach your target audience? Right. For me, my target audience in doing anti-racist work was folk of color and Black and queer folk in these corporations that were feeling like no matter how much they produced, they were never worthy. Right now, if all those people are being laid off, that need is still present, right? They're still walking around the world, walking around the community, still struggling with disconnecting their productivity from their worth. How can I reach those humans, right? How can I get creative? Maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a course, maybe it's a retreat. I don't know. Get creative in the ways that you reach them. But it doesn't always have to be in these really kind of direct ways of working with a particular organization to come in and do a workshop or a training.
Yeah, that sort of flexibility, I think, is so key, and that attunement to like the changing of language, right? And certain phrases. It's all of it's just really. It is fascinating. What is your biggest conflict with some of the language that's being used, like psychological safety and?
I would say my biggest challenge is we're not all operating from the same definition. So I need to understand how that organization is operationally defining psychological safety or belonging or inclusion. but also what are the actions to align with that definition, right? I think it's really not, and I've been the consultant that has come into organizations and have cultivated beautiful mission statements and beautiful language for them. And for me, it's been important to say, okay, but this language means these actions, right? It's not something I just want you to throw up on your website. So for me, my struggle is really understanding, like, do you really mean this, or does it look good? Does it look like a nice retweet and a nice like, or is it something that you're actually doing? And that's where I want to get into the weeds. And some organizations want that, and some organizations don't. And I think that's where I'm kind of moving through some bumps and grooves right now.
Yeah, and I think, I feel like especially in this work, so much of this is like resilience, right? Because in the process of doing this work, you are shifting, your perspectives are changing, but also there's inevitable, like you said, roadblocks and bumps, and going back to that North Star image we had, shared previously, I think it is like thinking a lot about that North Star moment, and especially in times like these where there is so much, uncertainty and volatility. I have two final questions for you. So one of them is, when a company or a therapist practice removes like DEI language from their website or materials, does it always mean they've stopped doing the work, or are there like more nuances there?
Yeah, I would argue that there are more nuances there. I've witnessed even some of my consulting clients who are, small grassroots organizations, nonprofits who don't have a huge legal budget, and they've made the decision to remove some of their language from their websites. But internally, that work is still happening. Right? Internally, they're really ensuring that they want to continue to move towards creating an anti-racism and even decolonizing some of their practices to ensure that it is equitable and inclusive for the most marginalized. So I do think it's more nuanced. I don't think it's every organization that is taking it down has completely kind of forgiven and letting go of anti-racist work. But I do think it begs question. Right? When it is a billion-dollar company that has a $1 million legal team, that's a different conversation than maybe a smaller organization that doesn't have that backing or that power. Yeah.
So practically, for example, like a smaller organization could have some of their funding through like federal means or something. Is that it sounds like that's usually a major reason why.
Yeah, they have to be held accountable too. Yeah. Right. So how can they protect themselves kind of on the public side to ensure that they're still doing the deep-rooted work that they want to do in the community?
Yeah. Kenya, my last question for you is, I know this is our first time meeting in person, but there is a joy and an optimism to you and a spirit, like it's joyful. This is really hard work, especially in times like these. So how do you maintain your joy and hope?
Thank you so much for reflecting that and noticing that. I'm really grateful for that one. For me, and I know I've said this so many times, but it's community. And not in the, I get together with some folks in Cultivating Healers and I have a good day type of community. It's the virtual lunch chats with colleagues and friends who said, Kenya, you're looking a little ragged, love. You're not bringing the same amount of joy that you typically do. What's happening, right? Or where's that light that I tend to see from you? And that type of community is what's actually keeping me going, right? They're the kind of reminders and the mirrors for me that I might need a little bit more time off, or I might need a little bit more care, or I might need a little bit more play in my day-to-day. A mentor of mine that I spoke with a couple weeks ago, I haven't spoken to her in years, and I was telling her about, all of my accomplishments, and she goes, Kenya, that's great and all, but I haven't heard you play. I haven't heard any what. I don't care about the accomplishments. I want to know what's happening outside, right? I want to know what's happening outside of your office. And I think that's what I mean by community. I mean the people who are really checking in on you outside of the work that you're doing, to really care for your soul, to really care for your spirit. That's what keeps me going. That's the reminder for me that my work is necessary, and it's a part of this legacy that I'm really trying to build. So it would be community for me.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. Kenya, I'm so thankful for you. I'm thankful for our conversation. Where can we learn more about you and the beautiful work that you're doing in the world?
Yeah, so we have some amazing trainings coming up. If those folks don't know, Cultivating Healers is a CEU provider. We provide CEUs for psychologists, social workers, LMHCs, everyone under the sun. And we have a few courses coming up. So this September, we have a course on internal family systems. So if you're interested in parts or want to understand what the frick these parts are, that would be amazing, a training to attend. In October, we're doing a training on intimate partner violence in the LGBTQ community led by myself, which I'm super excited about. And then we have some trainings on body image and eating disorders in communities of color, as well as some trainings on kind of high functioning depression coming this December. So we have some amazing trainings out there for folks. And we also have our Cultivating Healers community, which is solely for folks of color who want to build an anti-racist, sustainable, and inclusive practice. And you can find all of that on my website at kenyacrawford.com or on Instagram at cultivatinghealers_.
Perfect. Kenya, thank you again for this conversation, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Hey there, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Kenya, and especially if you have been intentionally thinking about how do you build an anti-racist private practice. I hope that this conversation has been really helpful for you. Kenya's website again is over at kenyacrawford.com. Kenya was also really kind enough to give a discount code for the STC community. And so I will put that in the show notes for you as well. But if you are interested in doing this work and just being strategic and intentional about it, definitely encourage you to check out Kenya's website and presence, which is over at Cultivating Healers. Definitely follow them on Instagram as well. As I was reflecting on this conversation, I think the thing that I was taking away is this is something that I want to continue to be intentional with STC, and particularly as we build out Quiet Builder as well, and just thinking a lot about the work that I'm doing and the influence that we've had the incredible privilege to be able to gather and to be able to gain. How do we use that strategically and intentionally for a collective good? Kenya's website is again over at kenyacrawford.com. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.